questions for me today. I'm just going to introduce, this is Mrs. Patterson. She teaches first grade. She's our teacher of the year. Woo-hoo! So thank you for, once again, for allowing me to ask you some questions as it relates to rural education and the impact that it has on our community.
Okay.
I'm going to start by, if you would like to start out, I would like to know, when did you realize you wanted to become an educator?
So I've worked with children since I was an early teenager. I did a lot of babysitting, but then I actually started in this school system working summer camps when I was 16. So I've done that with this clientele for a long time, and kind of knew then, like, I definitely wanted to do some sort of like nurturing career, whether it was like nursing and caregiving or education. But in college, I decided this is definitely what I want to do, with just more experience in the classroom. I taught elementary art in college. I had like a unique opportunity to do that, and so like being in the classroom for a year with this age group kind of showed me that this is definitely what I would love to do. And then when I was in college, I'm so glad that that's what I chose, because not only do I love children, but I also really enjoy teaching reading and instructing and teaching academics, so it just kind of worked out.
Right. When did you realize you wanted to teach in a rural context, or did it just happen?
Well, I've always served in those communities when I was working for the county so young. I always worked for a rural school and served that clientele, so it was really just what I was comfortable with. But honestly, I don't know if this is the correct answer for your interview, but it really was just like a spiritual decision. When I was picking, interviewing for different places, there was a lot of availability for jobs, whether it was like a suburban school or not. But this is where I felt like I was called to be, so that's why I chose to work here, and I'm very glad that I do work with this community. So,
and we're glad that you're here.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, you spoke about suburban. There were jobs in the suburban area, and so you chose this route. We know that rural education is much different as it relates to funding,
yes,
resources, a lack of highly qualified educators.
yes.
The pay is not always great. The internet is not always great. So what would you have to say about being committed to sustainable change in that
Yes.
aspect?
Well, that is definitely true, where we don't always get the upper hand, especially when it comes to like our resources and our funding. But one thing I know I can always give is what you mentioned, was higher quality instruction. And so if you have that, the other things are a great help, but if you have a high quality instructor and someone who puts in the rigor and is willing to work, then you're going to see change in your students no matter the other deficits that you have to cross. And so I'm committed to sustainable change within like our community and working with our children, because I know that the education that I provide for them and the opportunities I give them in the classroom is enough to help them grow and be just as successful as every other student. And so that will sustain itself in time, because they're going to be prepared every year academically for the foundation that I help set. So that's, I guess, how I answer.
Right. So with that being said, what is your vision for a thriving, empowered rural school? Like, what would be your vision for an empowered rural school, considering all the factors?
Well, I think the school that we teach at specifically has helped me like shape that vision a lot, because we do two really important things. We do a lot of like motivation and character education, which helps our students grow and develop socially, but then we also do we have a big push on academics, and we do a lot of cognitive and academic development. And I think my goal and vision for a school that maybe is less fortunate in resources or funding is that they would have just a really strong motivation and a lot of accessibility to things that they need to grow in as a whole child, so socially and academically. I hope that answered the question.
You did. That's great. So now I'm going to jump over back to previous, go back a little bit. What are some of your favorite things about teaching and education? You may have already touched on that already. So would you like to add anything? Like, what's that drive?
Yeah.
What is it? What makes you want to get up
Yeah.
and come to work every day?
What's most motivating to me as a teacher is seeing student growth. So like when I'm teaching my students something, especially for my students, which a lot of them do come in underprepared for the curriculum or, for the standards what we're teaching. When I see them, or maybe also they come in and they kind of have a stigma around them, like maybe from a previous school or a previous teacher has said, they have capabilities to their learning, but when I see them make those jumps or defy those expectations, or I see their data grow and see like what we're doing in the classroom, it's working, that is super motivating to me. It pushes me to the next month and then to the next day, the next month, and the next year. When I see student growth, that's like the most academically and socially too. Like with their behavior, that is super motivating to me. When I find strategies that works for student behavior and I see them start to regulate better, really just student growth is super motivating.
Good. And I like that you say that, because that's one of my pet peeves. Like, we get students from the stigmas, for one, in the rural areas, like uneducated parents, or because of there's a lack of money that the child is not doing well.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that I've learned is that once you build confidence in a child and you rid the distractions about what happened last year or what happened, then it's better.
Yeah.
Like, and just to see that what someone else said, you've been able to change the trajectory. Like, you were able to find what worked. So I totally agree with that. So teaching in a rural setting has unique challenges and opportunities. What are some of the challenges you've encountered as a rural teacher?
Well, we did just kind of talk about those, and not to negate, like, there are a lot of things that I can put my hand in and we will absolutely see growth, but some of the challenges are the things that we did just mention. Those don't go away just because we work super hard. We still have to fight those things daily, like lack of resources, lack of funding, and also we have a good percentage of children whose parents don't know how to be best involved or choose not to be involved, and that is very hard on their education. So those things don't go away just because we find better instructional practices. We're still fighting those. Sometimes I feel like even over the weekend we have to get back in routine because students maybe didn't go have an educational opportunity over the weekend or had those experiences. So in the classroom, my expectations are a little bit different. So those things are still challenging and they don't go away. And if we had, betterment in all of those things, I think that we'd see success quicker or easier, but I don't think it changes our ability to see success. I just think our accessibility is a little bit different when we have to jump those hurdles.
All right, so this one here is kind of, you were talking about parents, and parents don't necessarily have, we believe that parents send us the very best that they have.
Yes.
But they don't always know, or they don't know how to, so, and it's the same as it relates to like community involvement and things of that nature. So how important is it for encouragement for community collaboration to you? How important is that when you're in a rural sector, especially where the funding is low, where the resources are low, where there's not a lot of parental involvement due to parents having to work or just not showing up because they're intimidated or what have you? How important is it for encouragement for community collaboration to you?
Vitally important, because alone we can't be the only socializer of a child, and their parents are the heaviest socializer of them, and then all the things that they're involved with, including school, is just one of them. So if I know that this is kind of talking about the community broader, but to start with, like with the parents, we do have a lot of parents who want to be involved, and we don't really give them what they need, the tools to do that. So I feel like that's super important, because what we're learning at school should also extend at home. Obviously their parents are the ones solely responsible for their development cognitively too. So if we are giving, helping them understand what we do in the first grade, their student may know, but if they can help their student at home if they don't understand the expectations of the grade level. And then obviously resources can be hard to come by. So if we're not putting in their hand texts that the students can read at home, or mathematical practices they can do, or connecting them to free resources like the public library or with other community groups, like if we're not sending things home, you know, they're busy, they're working for their children, they have multiple children, like they have their job and then their job as a mother or a dad or a grandma or grandpa. So if we can help them like in the educational space, I think that's vitally important. And then finding other parts of the community that can feed into our school, like reaching out to the public library or safety presenters, people who can come in and do things in the school too is very important.
Very important. Thank you. Right. So I think I have I'll save that one. Okay, so what would you tell future educators who may be looking to teach in a rural setting?
I would want to encourage them to do it, especially like, I would definitely say don't work in I'm trying to articulate what I mean, but I think I would encourage them to not look at the stigma that's there, you know, like don't listen to those things, because those things aren't always necessarily true. And a lot of those things come from a negative mindset from someone who has spoken that into you, someone who hasn't figured out, you know, ways to be effective, and they might project like their own frustration on you. That does not mean that your experiences will be the same just because you are less fortunate in the resources and funding that you have. But there's so much of a reward in any space that you teach, whether it is, you know, even in teaching areas that are more fortunate in what they receive is still rewarding, and in this space too, because the children don't change. Children are children everywhere, and every child deserves an education that's the exact same. So if you come prepared and motivated to do that, then any challenge you face, you will be able to tackle. So,
well, thank you, thank you. You
Yeah.
got it. That's it. Is there anything else you would like to add, or?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, thank you so much for allowing me to interview you. You're such an amazing educator. I would want my child in your class.
Thank you.
As I tell you all the time.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.